The Crixian warships emerged from hyperspace like vengeful gods, their obsidian hulls blocking out the stars above New Eden Colony. Commander Lyra Martinez stood frozen at her command console aboard Orbital Station 7, watching the catastrophe unfold through reinforced viewport panels. Her fingers gripped the steel railing until her knuckles turned white.
"They're not even bothering with demands," Lieutenant Parker said, his voice cracking. "No ultimatum, no warning. They're just—"
A brilliant flash of purple light cut him off as the first plasma barrage struck the colony's main agricultural dome. The massive structure shattered like a crystal goblet, its fragments catching the light of New Eden's twin suns. Through the station's external cameras, Martinez could see thousands of tiny shapes being sucked into the vacuum, precious food stores that would have fed millions. "Get me a line to Earth Defense Command, now!" Martinez barked, but she already knew it was useless. The Crixians had deployed their quantum interference field. No signals would get in or out until they were finished. The next target was the residential sector. Martinez felt bile rise in her throat as she watched the massive energy weapons tear through the reinforced habitation units like paper. 2 million colonists lived down there. 2 million souls who'd come to build a new life on the frontier. "Commander!" Security Chief Rogers called out. "The civilian bunkers. They're still cycling their airlocks. Not everyone made it inside yet." Martinez slammed her fist against the console. The overhead lights flickered as another blast rocked the station. "How many ships are we looking at?" 37 capital ships, ma'am, plus support craft." A bitter laugh escaped her lips. 37 ships to murder civilians. How brave of them. The station's AI chimed in with artificial calm. "Warning! Hull breach detected in sections 12 through 15. Emergency protocols engaged." Through the chaos, Martinez caught fragments of panicked radio chatter from the surface. Desperate pleas for help, children crying, final messages to loved ones. Each one felt like a physical blow. "They're targeting the mining complexes now," Parker reported numbly. "The fusion reactors. Oh, God." The explosion that followed turned night into day. A massive shockwave rippled across the planet's surface, flattening everything in its path. The station's radiation sensors screamed in protest before burning out completely. As Martinez watched her colony die, a cold certainty settled over her. The Crixians thought this would break humanity's spirit. They thought this show of force would cow them into submission. They had no idea what they'd just started. "Log this," she commanded, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. "Time, stamp 2347 standard. New Eden Colony. Has fallen. 2 million civilians presumed dead. No provocation. No quarter given." She paused, then added, "And may whatever gods they believe in have mercy on their souls. Because after this, we sure as hell won't." The Crixian ships were already turning to leave, mission accomplished. Their engines flared bright against the darkness of space, like demons returning to the abyss. They didn't bother destroying the station. They wanted witnesses. They wanted the word to spread. "Be afraid," their actions said. "This is what happens when you expand too far, too fast." But as Commander Martinez watched them disappear into hyperspace, she knew they'd made a terrible mistake. They hadn't just murdered colonists today. They'd woken dragons! The emergency session of the Earth Defense Council erupted into chaos the moment Commander Martinez's transmission finished playing. Holographic displays showed the destruction in horrifying detail. The shattered domes, the radioactive craters, the fields of debris that had once been homes and schools and hospitals. 2 million dead. Councilmember Thompson slammed his fist on the polished obsidian table. They murdered 2 million civilians without warning. Admiral Victor Kane stood silent at the head of the table, his weathered face illuminated by the red emergency lights. At 73, he was the oldest serving member of Earth's military command. His presence alone had kept the council meeting from dissolving into a complete shouting match.
The Crixians believe they've caught us with our pants down, Kane said, his deep voice cutting through the noise like a blade through silk. They think we're nothing but merchants and farmers playing at civilization. A dangerous smile crossed his face. I say, it's time we show them how wrong they are.
The council chamber grew quiet. Everyone knew Kane's reputation. The man hadn't led Earth's defense forces for 30 years by being soft.
Project Dragonforge, Kane announced, touching a control on his wrist computer. The chamber's main holographic display shifted, showing a massive space station hidden within the asteroid belt. While we've been playing nice with the galactic community, putting on our friendly face, we've been preparing.
Council member Rodriguez leaned forward. Preparing? For what?
For this exact scenario, Kane replied. The Crixians aren't the first expansionist empire we've encountered in human history, and they won't be the last. But they've made one critical mistake. They assumed our technological development matched our public facade.
The hologram zoomed in on the station, revealing rows upon rows of ships unlike anything in Earth's known fleet. Sleek, predatory vessels with hull configurations that seemed to drink in light itself. Ladies and gentlemen, Kane continued, meet the real Earth Defense Force. While our public shipyards have been producing outdated cruisers and retrofitted cargo ships, Dragonforge has been developing weapons that would make our ancestors proud. How? Council member Chen's voice trailed off as the hologram displayed the ship's specifications. These capabilities, they're decades beyond anything we've shown the galaxy. Kane's smile grew harder. Did you really think humanity survived its own violent history without learning a few tricks? We've been sandbagging councillors, playing weak, letting potential enemies underestimate us. He gestured to the scenes of destruction still playing on other screens. And now we have justification to show our real teeth. The Phantom-class stealth carriers, Kane continued, highlighting one of the larger vessels. Quantum phase drives. Dark Forge armor. Weapons that could crack a planet's crust. We have 12 fleets ready for immediate deployment, with more in production. My God, Thompson whispered. How long have we... Since the first alien contact, Kane replied. We learned from Earth's history. Whenever a more advanced civilization meets a less advanced one, it rarely ends well for the latter. So we decided to stack the deck. Every public treaty, every trade agreement, every technological exchange. It was all carefully managed to hide our true capabilities. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity hadn't been helpless at all. They'd been waiting, watching, preparing. And now? Rodriguez asked quietly. Kane's expression could have frozen plasma. Now we show the galaxy why Earth's ancient myths are filled with dragons. We hit them hard, we hit them fast, and we make damn sure no one ever threatens a human colony again. He turned to face the full council, his voice carrying the weight of 3 decades of preparation. The Crixians wanted to send a message? Fine, let's send one back. Something simple, that any species can understand. His eyes gleamed with predatory satisfaction. Don't fuck with humanity. The council's vote was unanimous. For the first time in 30 years, Admiral Victor Kane gave the order he'd been waiting for. Release the dragons! The Crixian border outpost never saw them coming. How could they? The 3 Phantom-class carriers slipped through their sensor network like ghosts, their quantum phase drives leaving no trace in normal space. Within their armored hulls, crews worked in total silence, guided by neural interfaces that made verbal communication unnecessary. Fleet Commander Tanya Blackwood stood on the bridge of the Dragon's Breath, watching the tactical display with predatory focus. The Crixian outpost hung in space before them, its defense grid dormant, its crews completely unaware of the death approaching from their blind spot. All ships report ready, her tactical officer transmitted through the neural net.
Dragon squadrons armed and eager. Blackwood allowed herself a small, cold smile. Deploy the dragons!
Launch bays opened silently across all three carriers. What emerged weren't the clumsy fighters the galaxy thought humans used. These were Dragon-class assault craft, each one a technological terror that could outmaneuver anything in known space. The first sign the Crixians had of trouble was when their primary reactor suddenly went dark. The second was their defense grid turning against their own ships. By then, it was far too late. "By the eternal void," a Crixian commander broadcast in panic. "What are these things? How did they—" His transmission cut off as his ship split in half, quantum blades slicing through shields that were supposed to be impenetrable. The Dragon squadrons moved like a perfectly choreographed dance of destruction. Their Dark Forge armor absorbed enemy fire like it was nothing more than light rain. Their weapons, technologies humanity had kept hidden for decades, tore through Crixian defenses as if they were made of paper. "Sir!" a Crixian officer screamed over an open channel. "These can't be human ships. Their technology is— it's impossible. They're accessing systems through protocols that don't exist." Blackwood's smile grew wider. Of course the protocols didn't exist. Not in any database the Crixians had access to. While humanity had pretended to stumble along with basic quantum theory, their best minds had pushed the boundaries of physics itself. "Send the message," Blackwood commanded. On every Crixian screen, in every command center, the same video began playing. Admiral Kane's face, hard as stone, delivering humanity's response. "You thought you knew what humanity was capable of. You thought we were weak. Now you know better. This is only the beginning." The Dragon squadrons reformed, their hulls still pristine despite the chaos they'd unleashed. Behind them, the Crixian outpost was a graveyard of broken ships and shattered stations. Not a single shot had touched their forces. "Message received from Crixian High Command," the communications officer reported. They're demanding to know what we are." Blackwood activated the broadcast system. "We're humanity's real fleet. The ships you've seen before. Nothing but decoys. Masks we wore while we prepared. Now you get to see what dragons can do." The carriers vanished back into quantum space, leaving behind a scene of devastation that would send shockwaves through the galaxy. Within hours, reports would reach every major power. Reports of human ships that ignored the laws of physics, of weapons that shouldn't exist, of defenses that made mockery of advanced alien technology. In the Crixian war room, the High Command stared at the damage reports in stunned silence. Their most heavily defended outpost, reduced to rubble in minutes. Their best ships, torn apart by weapons they couldn't even detect. And the humans had made it look easy. "What have we done?" the Crixian War Minister whispered. "What have we awakened?" The answer came in the form of more alerts, more human fleets appearing from nowhere, more impossible ships targeting Crixian assets across 3 sectors. They wanted a war? They got one, just not the kind they expected. The dragons were awake, and they were hungry. 25 years earlier, beneath the surface of Mars, Commander Akiko Tanaka stood before the first completed Dragon-class prototype. The hangar stretched for kilometers underground, hidden from prying satellite eyes and curious alien observers. Her hand rested on the Dark Forge hull, feeling the subtle vibration of power beneath its surface. "Beautiful, isn't she?" a voice echoed through the cavernous space. Admiral Kane, then just a captain, walked up beside her. "The aliens think we're still struggling with basic shield harmonics." Tanaka nodded, her fingers tracing the quantum resonance patterns in the hull. "The greatest deception wasn't hiding our technology, sir. It was hiding our nature." The memory shifted to the War College briefing room, 6 months after first contact. Tanaka stood before Earth's combined military leadership, her presentation displaying historical patterns of technological civilizations. Humanity has something none of the alien species we've encountered possess, she had told them. A continuous warrior culture stretching back thousands of years. While they evolved past their violent stages, we preserved ours, refined it, and most importantly, we learned to hide it. Back in the present, Tanaka now served as Dragonforge's chief of strategic operations. Her office, deep within Titan's ice crust, displayed artifacts from Earth's military history. A samurai sword, Roman legion standards, Mongol composite bows. Not as decorations, but as reminders. The Spartans, the Mongols, the samurai, the Marines, she explained to her latest batch of dragon pilots.
We didn't abandon their teachings. We computerized them, quantified them, built them into the DNA of every ship and weapon we designed.
Screens around her office showed the results of their latest strike against the Crixians. The aliens still couldn't comprehend how thoroughly they'd been deceived.
When we met the galactic community, Tanaka continued, they saw what they expected to see. Another young race, technologically primitive, eager to learn. They never questioned why we accepted their outdated drive systems. Never wondered why we showed such interest in their obsolete weapons. Her neural implant pinged, displaying Admiral Kane's latest battle reports. More Crixian fleets shattered. More impossible victories. Every trade deal, every technology exchange was carefully crafted, she told her pilots. We showed them clumsy ships built in orbital yards while Dragonforge cranked out vessels that would make their top scientists weep. We played the eager students while our quantum labs broke physics over their knee.
A lieutenant raised his hand. But, Commander, why wait? Why not show our strength from the beginning?
Tanaka's smile could have frozen nitrogen. Because humans understand something the aliens forgot. The strongest position is when your enemy underestimates you. We learned that from Sun Tzu, from Clausewitz, from 100 generations of warriors who knew that deception multiplies force. She brought up the original planning documents from 25 years ago. Operation Paper Dragon, they'd called it. Act weak when strong, act strong when weak. Let the galaxy think humanity was just another upstart civilization. We knew this day would come, she said, touching the ancient sword on her wall. Some empire would decide we were an easy target, would think they could bully us, dominate us, destroy us. And when they did, her neural feed showed another Crixian fleet vanishing under Dragon Squadron attacks. More impossible human ships appearing from nowhere, more demonstrations of technology that shouldn't exist. The galaxy forgot what it means to be warriors, Tanaka said softly. They evolved past it, thinking themselves civilized. But humanity? We just got better at it. More efficient, more deadly. And now they get to learn what we've known all along.
She turned to her pilots, her eyes gleaming with predatory satisfaction. Never start a fight with someone who's been preparing to finish it for 25 years.
Ambassador Zarix watched in horror as the pride of the Crixian fleet burned. 300 ships, the largest armada ever assembled, now scattered like broken toys across the Centauri Gap. The quantum sensors on his diplomatic vessel couldn't even process what they were seeing. Human weapons that bent reality itself, drives that ignored the laws of physics, armor that simply refused to acknowledge incoming fire. Impossible, First Admiral Krell breathed, his 4 eyes wide with disbelief. They were nothing. Primitive. We watched them for decades. No, Zarix corrected, his ceremonial robe suddenly feeling too heavy. They watched us. The battle unfolding before them defied every military doctrine in known space. Dragon-class ships phased through solid matter, their quantum drives letting them treat space itself as a suggestion rather than a law. When Crixian vessels fired, the human ships were simply elsewhere. When the humans fired back, their weapons ignored shields as if they didn't exist.
Multiple quantum breaches detected, a sensor officer screamed. They're breaking through from everywhere at once.
The dragon's breath emerged from a hole in reality directly above the Crixian command ship. Its hull seemed to drink in the light of nearby stars, making it look like a moving piece of the void itself. Smaller dragon fighters swarmed around it like angry wasps, their impossible maneuvers making mockery of inertia.
"This is Fleet Commander Blackwood." The transmission cut through every frequency, every encryption. "You wanted to see humanity's real face? Take a good look."
What followed wasn't just a battle, it was a demonstration. Human ships executed maneuvers that should have turned their crews to paste, fired weapons that made Zarex's scientific advisors babble incoherently about broken physics, and shrugged off hits that should have vaporized small moons.
"The reports were right," Zarex whispered. "All those decades, asking for our help with basic drive technology, struggling with simple shield harmonics. It was all a lie."
First Admiral Krell slumped in his command chair. "They were testing our defenses, learning our weaknesses. While we thought we were helping primitive humans catch up, they were
"Preparing to counter everything we had," Zarex finished. "Look at their weapon configurations. They're designed specifically to bypass our best shields. Their armor absorbs our exact energy frequencies." This wasn't just preparation. This was methodical, systematic. This was a trap generations in the making, Krell realized, and we walked right into it. Another explosion lit up space as a dragon squadron executed what looked like a synchronized dance of destruction. Their quantum blades carved a Crixian dreadnought into perfectly symmetric pieces, the cuts so clean they looked almost surgical. "Send the surrender signal," Krell ordered, his voice hollow. "Before there's nothing left to surrender." Zarex stepped forward. "Let me. As ambassador, perhaps." The words died in his throat as space itself seemed to tear open. More human ships emerged, these even larger than the first wave. Their hulls bore markings that the translator couldn't process, symbols that seemed to shift and change as he watched them. "Too late," Commander Blackwood's voice came again, almost gentle now. "You don't get to surrender until you understand, really understand, what you did, what you woke up, what humanity truly is." The new ships began to power up weapons that made Zarex's survival instinct scream. Energy readings went off the charts, then broke the charts entirely. Reality itself seemed to hold its breath. "We could have been allies," Blackwood continued. "Partners. Instead, you chose to be an object lesson. So be it. Show them what a real quantum cascade looks like." The last thing Zarex saw before his emergency teleporter activated was space itself starting to unravel around the Crixian fleet. His last thought, as he materialized in his escape pod, was a realization that would haunt his species for generations. They hadn't discovered humanity. Humanity had discovered them. And they had just failed the test spectacularly. The Crixian homeworld hung in space like a jewel, its 3 moons casting triple shadows across its purple oceans. Above it, the remnants of their once proud defense fleet formed a broken ring of debris and desperate last stands. And emerging from quantum space like avenging angels came the full might of humanity's dragon fleets.
Not 3 ships this time. Not 12. Not even 100.
1,000 vessels materialized simultaneously, their dark forge hulls forming a sphere around the entire Crixian star system, each one larger than anything humanity had revealed before, each one crackling with enough power to reduce planets to atoms. In the grand chamber of the Crixian High Command, Supreme Leader Vex watched the tactical displays with something beyond fear. The human ships had surrounded them so perfectly, so completely, that it looked like a work of art. A beautiful, terrifying display of absolute military superiority. "Your entire species," Admiral Kane's transmission reached every device, every screen, every communication system in the system, "needs to understand what happens next, and why it happens." The dragon fleets began to move in perfect synchronization, their formations shifting like a vast geometric dance. As they moved, They revealed something that made Vex's heart stop. A massive construct emerging from quantum space, larger than any artificial structure ever recorded. That, Kane continued, is a world forge, currently positioned to strip the atoms from your homeworld and use them to manufacture more Dragon-class ships. We have 6 more, by the way. Would you like to see them too? Supreme Leader Vex pressed the emergency broadcast button. Please, he said, his voice shaking. We surrender, unconditionally. Funny thing about surrender, Kane replied. His hologram appeared in the chamber, so perfect it looked solid. You assumed we wanted it. The chamber doors opened. Commander Lyra Martinez walked in, her dress uniform pristine, her eyes hard as diamonds. Behind her came the survivors of New Eden Colony, their faces projected on floating screens that filled the air. 2 million voices, Martinez said quietly. 2 million lives. And you snuffed them out to send a message. She walked up to Vex, looking down at the alien leader. Well, message received. And now we're going to send one back. The World Forge began to pulse with energy. The Dragon fleets moved again, taking positions that could eliminate every major population center in seconds. But, Martinez continued, raising a hand. The fleet stopped. The World Forge powered down. We're not you! Vex blinked all 4 eyes in confusion. I don't understand. Admiral Kane stepped forward, his hologram moving with perfect fluidity. Humanity's strength isn't in our weapons, Supreme Leader. It's not in our ships or our technology or our deceptions. It's in our ability to choose. Right now, we're choosing not to become the monsters you thought we were. The terms are simple, Martinez said. Your entire military command structure surrenders to Earth authority. Your weapons are decommissioned. Your empire becomes a protectorate of Earth. And in exchange... She smiled, but there was steel in it. We show you what humanity's really best at. Not just fighting wars, but ending them. Not just breaking worlds, but building them better. The tactical displays showed more ships arriving. But these weren't warships. Construction vessels, terraforming platforms, medical ships. You wanted to know humanity's true face? Kane asked. Here it is. We can be your worst nightmare or your strongest ally. We can remake your worlds into ash or help you forge them into paradise. The choice, for the first time in your species' history, isn't yours. It's ours. Vex looked at the faces of the New Eden survivors, at the overwhelming power of the Dragon fleets, at the impossible technology humanity had hidden for so long. And finally, he understood. They hadn't just been preparing for war, they'd been preparing for peace. A peace enforced not by fear, but by the demonstrated ability to transform fear into hope. We accept, Vex said quietly, and thank you. Martinez nodded. Lesson learned? Yes, Vex replied. Never wake the dragons. Wrong, Kane corrected. The lesson is, the dragons were never sleeping. We were just waiting to see who was worthy of flying with us. 1 year after the Crixian surrender, Ambassador Zarek stood before the Galactic Council, delivering his final report on humanity's emergence as a dominant force in known space. The humans have a saying, he told the assembled representatives. Those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. We failed to learn, failed to see, and in doing so, we gave them exactly what they needed, an excuse to stop pretending. The holographic displays showed the transformation of former Crixian worlds. Where there had been military bases, now stood centers of learning. Where weapons had been forged, medical miracles emerged. The dragons, it seemed, were as skilled at creation as they were at destruction. To any who might consider following our example, Zarek concluded, looking directly at the more militant council members, I offer this warning. That primitive human ship you're scanning, It's probably a Dragon-class destroyer watching you back. That outdated human colony, likely sitting on top of a world forge. And that diplomatic request for technological assistance. He allowed himself a small laugh. Well, let's just say humans have an interesting sense of humour. Above Earth, Commander Martinez watched the speech from the bridge of her new ship, a Dragon-class carrier named Second Chances. A fitting reminder that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in having the biggest teeth, but in choosing when not to bite. Usually.